What if Assyria conquered Jerusalem? Imagine the night air heavy with ash, the city walls trembling, the last torches along the ramparts flickering like tiny stars in a stolen sky. In our Bibles, this is the moment of an impossible rescue. But what if, instead of a miracle, the gates cracked, the Assyrian banners rose, and Jerusalem fell? How would faith sound if the chorus changed here, centuries earlier than we remember? Before we turn the hinge, let's steady ourselves in the story we know. It's the late 700s BCE. The superpower of the age is Assyria. Iron, chariots, siege ramps, and a policy of mass deportations that grinds whole nations into a single empire. King Hezekiah sits on the throne in Jerusalem, a king remembered for courage and reform. Under pressure, he tries to shake off the Assyrian yoke. He strengthens defenses, digs a tunnel to pull water into the city, and listens to the prophet Isaiah. Sennacherib, the Assyrian king, answers Hezekiah's defiance with war. Cities fall like dominoes. Lachish, a proud Judean fortress, becomes a cautionary relief carved in stone. Captives marched away, walls tumbled. Then the armies come to Jerusalem. The Assyrian commander stands at the wall and taunts the people. Don't trust your king. Don't trust your God. Surrender now. Inside, Hezekiah prays. Isaiah speaks a word of hope. And then, in the biblical telling, a catastrophe strikes the Assyrian camp overnight. The army breaks, Sennacherib retreats, and Jerusalem wakes to a sunrise of pure relief. The city survives. The temple stands. Hezekiah breathes. This survival matters. It rewires the centuries that follow. Judah lives on for another 100 years, until Babylon later destroys the city in 586 BCE. The exile comes, but late. The return under the Persians comes, but sure. The Second Temple rises. Jerusalem becomes the gravitational center of a faith that moves from scroll to synagogue to song. But now, let's gently bend the beam. What if that night ended differently? What if the siege didn't break? Imagine those same ramparts at dawn, smoke coiling from breached gates. Assyrian soldiers flood the streets. The temple's bronze gleams in foreign hands. Hezekiah, captured. Priests, scattered. And a royal line that has held the city since David, cut short in a single hour. Assyria had a method. When they conquered a kingdom, they didn't just collect taxes. They erased borders inside people's heads. They took leaders, artisans, scribes, the cultural spine, and scattered them to distant towns. They brought other peoples in to mix, to blend, to forget. They had already done this in the north, after the fall of Samaria. The result was a hybrid community with overlapping traditions, the ancestors of Samaritans, and a tangle of loyalties. If Jerusalem falls in 701 BCE, Judah enters that same machinery, not in a century, but immediately. Picture the temple precinct, stripped in stages. Gold, silver, cedar, incense burners, all cataloged as war prizes. Temple singers and priests who once led pilgrims up to Zion now learn strange street names in Nineveh or Arbela. The Psalms still exist, but their echo changes. The refrain isn't by the rivers of Babylon, a song still a century away in our timeline. It becomes by the canals of Assyria, and the grief arrives early. Without Jerusalem as a living city, the faith of Judah decentralizes decades earlier. Where do you go when the one place you were told to go is sealed behind foreign gates? You go to your table. You go to your scrolls. You go to small gatherings in borrowed rooms. In this world, proto-synagogue life, shared prayers, readings, a portable holiness, blossoms earlier. The idea that God's presence can go with you, not just live in one building, becomes not a late lesson of exile, but an immediate survival skill. Look down the corridors this opens. King Josiah's reforms, a powerful episode about cleaning house, centralizing worship, rediscovering a scroll, never happen, because Josiah himself never reigns. The royal family is diffused in exile. The found book of the law still exists, but it's not discovered in a temple renovation. Instead, fragments are carried like treasure in clay jars by families on the move. Now, rather than one scroll found in one place, many scrolls circulate across many towns. A canon takes shape not just in Jerusalem's courts, but along back streets in Assyrian markets. The text becomes diaspora born. And prophecy? Isaiah's words still ring, but their tone changes. The earlier chapters, tied to the siege and hope of survival, become laments and long-distance letters. Later hopes, swords into plowshares, a remnant returning, catch fire in exile communities not in Babylon a century later, but across the Assyrian provinces now. The remnant theology, the idea that after cutting back a tree, a green shoot remains, roots itself into kitchen table faith years ahead of schedule. Meanwhile, the map moves. With Judah subdued, Assyria tightens its hold over the land bridge to Egypt. Garrisons near the coast grow. Trade caravans carry scarred stories east and west. Does Assyria last longer because of this victory? Perhaps a little. Tax revenues rise, a troublesome pocket is pacified. But empires run on more than coin. Assyria still faces a fatigue written into its bones. Succession crises smolder. Neighboring powers, Babylon to the south, the Medes to the northeast, continue to sharpen their knives. The fall of Assyria may be delayed by a few years, but the tide of history is still coming. When Babylon and the Medes finally hammer Nineveh down, they inherit a southern Levant already reorganized. There is no independent Judah to conquer, only provinces and mixed communities. This means the famous Babylonian exile, as we remember it, changes shape. Instead of a clean fracture in 586 BCE, temple burned, nobles carried away, the exile is a long, earlier dispersion that stretches through decades, languages, and roads. There may still be a dramatic event, perhaps a final blow against the old temple site, but it's not the single origin story that it is for us. Instead of one wound, there are 1,000 cuts. Under the Persians, another hinge is altered. In our timeline, Cyrus announces a return. Judeans stream back to build the Second Temple, a modest house that becomes the beating heart of identity. But in this alternate world, who returns to what? The communities are spread farther and longer. The pull of Jerusalem is weaker because it has been a ruin for nearly 2 centuries. Some families trace their roots not to the hill country around Jerusalem, but to northern towns near Samaria, or farther east in Mesopotamia. The temple dream is not gone, but it's contested by geography. Here, a surprising candidate rises, Mount Gerizim near Shechem. In our world, centuries after, the Samaritans would build a temple there, claiming it as the chosen place. In this alternate flow, with Jerusalem's prestige broken early, the case for a sanctuary on Gerizim, central to the early patriarch stories, gains traction. Persian administrators prefer stability. If a temple on Gerizim keeps the peace of a mixed community, they may favor it. Suddenly, the axis of sacred space tilts. Pilgrims climb not to Zion in Jerusalem, but to Gerizim's slopes, where the breeze carries a different set of hymns. The scriptures, too, feel the tilt. A Gerizim-centered community preserves a Torah that highlights altars and blessings in that region. The collection of psalms expands with songs of longing not only for Zion, but for any place where God meets the remnant. The prophetic books circulate in versions shaped by exile editors, whose references fit Assyrian roads and Persian postal routes. The Septuagint, the Greek translation made in Egypt centuries later, might still happen, but its source texts are more varied, braided from communities that never recentered on Jerusalem. The result is a Bible with the same deep melody of one God, one covenant, but with more harmony lines from villages and valleys beyond Jerusalem's shadow. Pause here and feel the cultural effects rippling out. Without a second temple towering in Jerusalem's center, there is no grand sanctuary to desecrate under the Seleucids, and thus no Maccabean revolt in its familiar form. Resistance still happens, identity won't fold quietly, but it's local, flickering, less likely to birth a Hasmonean state. Hellenistic rule feels different. Ideas and faith practices negotiate street by street rather than in the echoing courtyards of one capital. And in the Roman centuries, faith walks into that world already decentralized. Teachers gather disciples under porticos and in farm courtyards, while pilgrims pray on hilltops where grandparents once wept for a city they never saw. The hopes for a son of David, a promise tethered to a throne in Jerusalem, transform. Instead of waiting for a king to reclaim a single city, expectation might lean towards a healer prophet who reunites scattered kin, a shepherd for a flock across borders. The messianic image stretches away from palace lines toward the living rooms of the dispersed. What emerges in such soil could be gentler in politics, more portable in practice, and earlier in welcoming outsiders. Around the Mediterranean, ethical monotheism still travels, but now it moves through mixed communities formed under Assyria, matured under Persia, and linguistically fluent before Rome arrives. It spreads not only through one city's priesthood, but through traders, scribes, and storytellers whose grandparents survived exile's first draft. When philosophers in Greek cities hear about one God who defends the humble and demands justice from kings, they do not point to Jerusalem. They point to a string of small synagogues along the coast and to a mountain sanctuary at Gerizim that feels both ancient and new. Even the sound of prayer changes. Imagine a lullaby in Elephantine, Egypt, where a Jewish community already existed in our world. In this timeline, its songs might carry older memories because the dispersion began earlier. The mother sings of promises made to Abraham, of blessings on Gerizim, of a God who traveled roads from Nineveh to Susa and never once misplaced his people. And the city of Jerusalem itself? It never disappears. Stones remember. After centuries, when the Romans mapped the land, Jerusalem becomes a regional hub again, but not a spiritual monopoly. Local shrines and synagogues remain strong. Some pilgrims still walk those old streets and touch the weathered blocks of a ruined platform. But the sacred map is no longer a bullseye. It's a constellation. Let's stand back and look at the frame. Our alternate history does not erase the themes we know: covenant, justice, mercy, exile, and return. But it shifts their venues and timing. The story is less about one mountain and more about many tables. Less a straight line from temple to temple, more a braided river through homes and hills. Here's a human detail to hold. In this world, a scribe named Eliab lives in an Assyrian town by a canal. He copies a psalm by lamplight. His son, born with a word from a language of neighbors, asks why they do not go to Zion. Eliab answers with a different word: Gerizim. And then he adds a third, softer word: anywhere. Anywhere we turn our hearts, we remember who we are. And someday, we will gather again. Mid-roll CTA, I'm curious. In this scenario, where do you think the heart of worship would settle? Jerusalem rebuilt, Gerizim rising, or an early network of synagogues with no single center? Share your take in the comments, and if you're enjoying these respectful what-ifs, tap subscribe so you don't miss the next story. The implications continue to ripple. Law and daily practice evolve with more local authority. Regional councils form under Persian and later Hellenistic oversight, establishing standards for Sabbath rest, dietary practice, and festivals that can be kept without a central altar. Passover, which in our timeline pivots around the temple, becomes a home ritual everywhere, codified earlier and refined in living rooms with elder storytellers at the head of the table. The message becomes astonishingly resilient. Oppression can close a gate, but it cannot close a story. Art and architecture change as well. Without a rebuilt temple complex in Jerusalem, artists turn their attention to scroll ornamentation, elaborate lampstands for household worship, embroidered curtains that hang in places of meeting, sacred beauty scaled for the human hand. Pilgrim songs reference paths through vineyards and olive groves leading to many small sanctuaries. Festivals include journeys to multiple towns rather than mass gatherings in one capital. Identity is located not in one skyline, but in a shared calendar and a shared text. When global religions begin to form, in our world hundreds of years later, they braid different strands of this heritage. A tradition that in our timeline would center on Jerusalem now arrives as a mature, distributed network. Its ethics, care for the stranger, justice for the poor, humility before God, are carried by people used to surviving without the spotlight. Converts encounter a faith used to moving in the margins. A universal message travels well when its center fits in the palm of your hand. Of course, this alternate path is not without sorrow. Without a central rallying point, political resistance is less likely to coalesce. The dream of national deliverance, a single banner raised over a single city, flickers. Some feel the loss deeply. They long for unity, for a cathedral-like symbol that says, "We are one people under one roof." Others argue that the roof is now the sky, and the house is every home. Debates are real, emotions keen, but the community survives by patience and by a quiet insistence that promises do not expire when buildings do. Archaeology in this world would tell a different story. The tunnel in Jerusalem still exists. Hezekiah dug it before the fall, but it becomes one marvel among many. The Lachish reliefs still show Assyrian might, now echoed by a sister panel celebrating the fall of Jerusalem, perhaps with priests in distinctive robes bowed low. In Samaria and on Gerizim, foundations grow thicker. Layers of ash and plaster speak of renovations and reconstructions. Ostraca, ink on pottery, carry names that link genealogies across provinces. Scholars in our time would trace a diaspora that began early and never stopped weaving. And the literature? Picture an anthology called Songs of the Way, compiled in Persian times, blending psalms of ascent with psalms of going out. It sits alongside the Torah and the prophets, cherished by families who measure their year not by trips to one altar, but by the rhythm of holy days every season. A grandparent recites in a courtyard, "Once we had one house. Now we are a house in many rooms, and everywhere the doorway is open." Let's return to that first night, to the moment we changed. In our real history, the sunrise after Assyria's retreat became a testimony. Deliverance can arrive in the darkest hour. In our alternate, the sunrise is different. It is not joy. Not yet. It's resolve. People gather what they can carry. A priest wraps a scroll against his chest. A mother ties bread in a cloth. A child asks where home is now. Someone answers, "Wherever we keep the story." What does that mean for us, listening centuries later? It means the core of this tradition, the spine beneath its cities and its kings, is not fragile. It was never just a building, however beautiful. It was a covenant written on hearts and retold across kitchen tables, under porticos, next to canals far from where it started. Whether Jerusalem stood or fell, this heartbeat could be heard. We set down our speculative lens here, with respect for the real path the past took, and wonder for the paths it might have walked. What if Assyria conquered Jerusalem? We might have awakened to a faith scattered earlier, temples relocated, a map with many bright centers instead of one. And yet, even there, the same refrain would rise. A people learning to carry holiness with them, to keep the story alive, and to hope for a gathering, somewhere, someday, under a sky big enough for everyone.